Hi, everyone. Welcome to ID Radio, your go-to podcast for the latest research and essential papers on infectious diseases.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So if you're in the world of infectious diseases, you know that some of our toughest battles are against fungal infections. They're hard to treat, and they're incredibly expensive.
That's exactly right. And today we're diving deep into one of the big ones, invasive candidiasis and specifically candidemia.
That's the bloodstream infection caused by Candida.
Yep, and these conditions are really lethal. The mortality rate, it sits somewhere between 15 and 20%. That's stubbornly high.
And when you see these patients clinically, it's an immediate crisis.
It is, not just for the patient, but for the whole healthcare system.
And the economics really underscore that. The sources we're looking at highlight hospitalization costs. They can go over $38,000
For a single episode.
For one episode, yeah. And the status quo, daily IV drugs, constant monitoring, it's all very high risk and labor intensive. So we're looking for something that could fundamentally shift how we treat this.
Exactly. And that's where our main source comes in. We're looking at a pivotal phase 3 clinical trial. It's called ReSTORE.
ReSTORE. Okay.
And it's comparing a brand new antifungal, Rezafungin, against, well, the established gold standard, which is caspofungin.
This trial feels like a big deal. I see it was co-funded by Cidara Therapeutics and Mundiforma, so it has major backing.
It is a big deal. And the core mission of the trial and, our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Can a novel drug, one designed for once-a-week treatment, prove that it's non-inferior?
Meaning it's just as good clinically as the current daily standard of care.
Precisely. The logistical difference there alone is it's massive.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this.
So let's start with where we are now. Why do we even need a new drug in this class, the echinocandins?
Right. We already have caspofungin, mycological, and fungin. Aren't they generally pretty effective?
They are. They're highly effective, and they're the recommended first-line therapy for a reason.
And what's that reason?
It's really twofold. They have really good safety profiles, and they're fungicidal.
So they actively kill the fungus. They don't just stop it from growing.
Exactly. But the current approach has some clear vulnerabilities that a new drug could, potentially solve.
And what are those? Is it just about resistance? Because that's always the big fear.
Resistance is sort of the existential worry, for sure. But the more immediate clinical problems are, well, they're more complex. First, the epidemiology is changing.
How so?
Well, it used to be that Candida albicans was the main culprit, but now we're seeing this slow shift toward non-albican species, things like C. glabrata or C. parapsilosis.
And some of those are just tougher to get rid of.
Inherently tougher, yeah.
Yeah.
So the target is moving, and the second thing, which is maybe more of a daily challenge with the current drugs, is pharmacokinetics.
Right, how the drug moves through the body.
Yeah, how it's absorbed, distributed, all of that. The current echinocandins have pretty short half-lives, which is why you have to give them every single day.
And that daily dosing must be a nightmare in the ICU.
Oh, it's so unpredictable. You take a critically ill patient, maybe their fluid status is all over the place, or a patient who is severely obese. Achieving that critical dose-exposure relationship is incredibly difficult. You're constantly chasing the right drug levels.
So the daily requirement becomes a daily struggle. You're just hoping the drug is getting where it needs to go.
Precisely. And that can compromise the treatment. So that's a huge justification for developing a drug with totally different dosing mechanics.
Which sets the stage perfectly for this new contender, Rezafungin. It's being called a next-generation echinocandin. What's the fundamental difference that lets them give it just once a week?
It all comes down to the half-life. It's just incredibly prolonged.
Okay.
Standard echinocandins need those daily shots to stay effective. But Rezafungin has been engineered to be much more stable in the body. It has a half-life of around 133 hours.
133 hours? That's what, 5.5 days?
About that, yeah.
So you go from a daily treatment imperative to needing access just once a week.
And that difference is, it's revolutionary in a critical care setting, but the advantage isn't just about convenience. The theory behind Rezafungin is to leverage that long half-life to deliver what the sources call front-loaded, high plasma drug concentrations early in therapy.
Can you give us an analogy for what that means? Like, what does that look like?
Okay, think of it like fighting a forest fire.
Okay.
The current daily drugs are like a steady, continuous water hose. It's effective, but you have to keep it running constantly to keep the fire down.
Makes sense.
Rezafungin, with its huge initial dose, we're talking 400 milligrams on day 1, is like hitting that fire with an immediate massive surge from a water cannon.
A huge initial punch.
Huge punch, exactly. The theory is that by hitting the candida so hard and so fast, you get rapid clearance of fungus from the blood or from tissue.
And maybe more importantly,
Maybe more crucially, you overwhelm the organism before it even has a chance to develop resistance. You stop the infection from ever really gaining a foothold.
that makes perfect sense.
Right.
Overwhelming the pathogen is always the goal. Here's where it gets really interesting. So you have this great theory, but you have to prove it. How did they design the ReSTORE trial to show a weekly regimen was as good as a daily one?
Well, this was a massive global effort. It was a multi-center randomized phase 3 trial. We're talking 66 different tertiary care centers across 15 countries.
What?
And they enrolled 199 patients. The mean age was around 61, which, reflects that critically ill population that usually gets these infections.
The blinding must have been really tricky. I mean, with a daily IV versus a weekly one, how do you keep people from knowing what they're getting?
That's a great point. They use a very clever design called a double dummy regimen.
The double dummy.
And this detail is critical to trusting the results. Because the dosing schedules were so different, if a patient or a doctor knew which one they were on, it could totally bias how they assess the outcome.
So everyone had to think they were on the exact same daily schedule.
Correct. Both the Rezafungin group and the caspofungin group got a daily intravenous infusion.
Okay.
So in the Rezafungin group, the drug was only active on day 1 and then again a week later. On all the other days, they just got an IV placebo.
Ah, so it looked like a daily IE.
It did. And the caspofungin group got their daily active drug, but they also got dummy weekly infusions and placebo pills to maintain that blinding. It's that level of detail that lets us trust the final result.
Can you just run through the specific active drug regimens again?
Sure. The Rezafungin group got a big 400 milligram IV dose on day 1, then 200 milligrams weekly after that. The caspofungin group got a 70 milligram loading dose on day 1, then 50 milligrams daily.
And the caspofungin patients had an option to switch to an oral drug, right?
That's right. They could switch to oral fluconazole after 3 days if they were stable, which is, common practice.
And the trial had to satisfy 2 big regulators, the FDA and the EMA. So they have 2 primary endpoints. What were they measuring?
The goal for both was to show that the new drug was no worse than 20% inferior to the standard. For the EMA in Europe, the focus was on global cure at day 42.
And that's a composite endpoint, right?
It is. It includes clinical cure, so symptoms are gone, radiological cure, meaning deep tissue infections are clearing, and mycological eradication.
The fungus is gone from the blood.
Exactly. The FDA, on the other hand, focused on the hardest clinical metric there is, 30-day all-cause mortality.
Survival.
Just survival. This split ensures the trial showed efficacy on both surrogate markers, like cure, and hard outcomes, like living or dying.
And we should note, they excluded some of the really complex cases, right? Like endocarditis or osteomyelitis.
They did, and pediatric patients, too. Those often need very prolonged treatment, which would be tough to assess in this kind of acute trial setting.
All right, let's get to the main event, the efficacy. Did Rezafungin actually meet those non-inferiority goals?
It absolutely did, on both counts. Let's start with the FDA mortality endpoint, because that's the clearest signal for survival. 30-day all-cause mortality was 24% for the Rezafungin group. That was 22 out of 93 patients. For the caspofungin group, it was 21%, 20 out of 94 patients.
Let's just pause on that for a second. A 21 to 24% mortality rate. It's just startlingly high.
Yeah.
It really shows how incredibly sick this population is, even on the best available drugs.
That is such a crucial observation. It tells you the challenge isn't just the drug, it's everything else going on with the patient. So given that, just proving non-inferiority is a major success.
So what was this statistical difference?
The treatment difference was small, just 2.4%, and the critical number, the 95% confidence interval, ran from minus 9.7% to plus 14.4%.
And since that upper number, 14.4%, is comfortably below the 20% margin they set.
Non-inferiority was successfully shown. Rezafungin proved it could keep these critically ill patients alive just as well as the standard of care.
Okay, so that's the FDA endpoint. What about the EMA's global cure endpoint at day 14?
The cure rates there were nearly identical. It was 59% for patients in the Rezafungin group and 61% in the caspofungin group.
Very.
Very. The weighted treatment difference was minus 1.1%, and the confidence interval was minus 14.9% to plus 12.7%.
And since that lower number, minus 14.9%, is above the minus 20% margin, that's a pass for the second endpoint as well.
Correct. The takeaway is clear. Statistically, Rezafungin performs just as well as the gold standard, and this held true whether patients had just candidemia or more invasive disease.
So efficacy is a wash. It's equal. But what about that theory of it working faster because of the front-loaded dose? Were there any hints of that in the data?
This is where things get really interesting, and you see the drug's potential differentiating factor. They looked at an exploratory outcome, the time to a negative blood culture.
So how fast the drug is clearing the organism from the blood?
Exactly. And the median time was numerically shorter for Rezafungin. It was 23.9 hours compared to 27.0 hours for caspofungin.
Okay, so that's about a 3-hour faster clearance. But I see the p-value there wasn't statistically significant, so should we really read into that?
That's a fair question. Normally, you wouldn't overinterpret a non-significant trend, but in the world of sepsis and severe candidemia, every hour counts.
Time is tissue. Time is life.
Absolutely. The faster you clear that bug, the better the outcomes usually are. So this trend, even if not significant, it aligns perfectly with the drug's design.
It's supportive evidence for the water cannon theory. Did they find anything else pointing to faster action?
They did. When they looked at mycological eradication at an early time point, day 5, the difference was bigger. For patients with candidemia, Rezafungin had a 78% eradication rate.
And caspofungin.
69%. So that's a 9-point difference at day 5. That's a pretty strong signal that the weekly regimen is achieving faster microbial clearance in those critical first few days.
A 9% difference is not trivial. That means fewer people with active fungal infection after 5 days, which should reduce the risk of it spreading.
What about safety?
The safety profile was basically what you'd expect. It was similar between the two drugs and consistent with the whole echinocandin class.
So no surprises. No new surprises. But because these patients are so sick, the rates of adverse events were very high. 91% in the Rezafungin group and 85% in the caspofungin group.
So most of those events probably reflect the patient's underlying critical illness, not the drug itself.
I think that's exactly right. The common things were pyrexia, hypokalemia, pneumonia, septic shock, the things you see in the ICU.
Yeah.
Serious adverse events were also similar, and most importantly, drug-related serious events were low.
So what we have is a drug that's equally effective, equally safe, but it's given once a week. So what does this all mean? How does this change things on the ground for clinicians?
The practical relevance is it's immense, and it goes right back to that $38,000 cost we mentioned.
Right.
When you have non-inferior efficacy but a weekly regimen, you get huge logistical relief.
Right.
You are drastically reducing the number of times a nurse has to go in and administer an IV dose.
And the less you have to access a central line, the better.
That is the single biggest operational and safety win here. The sources emphasize that this regimen could significantly reduce the need for PICC lines, peripherally inserted central catheters.
Which have their own costs and risks.
Huge risks. They can lead to catheter-related bloodstream infections, which is a devastating complication. If you don't need daily central access, you might avoid that risk entirely.
That is a massive potential benefit. And I see that's reflected in the IV treatment duration, too.
Absolutely. The data showed only 17% of the Rezafungin group needed prolonged IV treatment, like 15 to 28 days.
And for caspofungin?
That was 28%, so that's an 11-point difference. That is 11% fewer patients tied to a daily 5E infusion for weeks on end.
Which could translate directly into shorter hospital stays or at least a faster, simpler discharge plan.
It creates flexibility, which is something we just don't have in this space. And if you look beyond acute candidemia, we mentioned the trial excluded infections like osteomyelitis that need months of treatment.
Where adherence with a daily 5E would be a nightmare.
Precisely. That's where a long half-life becomes a massive advantage. The study authors really believe this weekly schedule could be a game changer for those chronic patient populations in future studies.
So, a compelling case for a new and strategically superior tool. The trial proved non-inferiority. But that early data, that hint of faster clearance, it does leave us with a final question for you, the listener, to think about.
It does. We know that early targeted treatment is everything in sepsis and candidemia. And we saw this numerical trend toward faster clearance. So the question is, how might future studies, maybe ones focusing just on the first 72 hours, leverage this drug's unique properties to actually improve survival?
If that early trend translates into even a small real benefit in those first few critical days, we could be looking at a drug that moves from being non-inferior to truly superior. Thank you for walking us through the ReSTORE trial.
Always a pleasure.
To our listener, we hope this deep dive gave you a clear and actionable look at this new development. Until the next deep dive, keep learning.
Thanks for watching. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to ID Radio.